people often don't realize the danger of just, hey, I got this big spreadsheet. I need to crunch this data. AI can do it for me without realizing that, AIs can become sentient.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we learn about the people that are on the front lines delivering and protecting patient care. I'm Ed Gaudet, the host of our program, and today I am pleased to be joined by Scott Dickinson, the Chief Information Security Officer at AnMed Health. There we go. That's a mouthful, Scott.
Yes, it is.
Now, you're based in South Carolina, I believe?
Yes, we are.
All right. Excellent. So, let's start off with tell the listeners a little bit about your current role in your organization.
Okay, so I am their first ever CISO here. It's not my first CISO role. So I've been charged with, building them up and leading and building out the security department, advancing it and making it, world class.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I saw a little bit about your background. It looks like you spent a lot of time in DOD. You were at the FBI for a little, so a lot of government experience. Yeah. How's that prepared you for this role?
So one of the good things about being in especially federal government for that long is you see the NIST standards and you have to do certification and accreditation. So you're used to audits and, preparing stuff to a standard. Mm-hmm. So it helps you out in that regard. I had 4 years with the state, again, different type of government, but still more government. And then you learn. And then, when you come up and someone says, well, which standard or framework do you use? I personally like the CIS ones, the CIS 18, start with basic housekeeping, go from there and do that, and then, as you're more advanced, NIST makes perfect sense and stuff like that. So.
Excellent. And were you in the military as well? How did you get into government?
No, so actually it's kind of ironic. A bunch of my friends, I was the youngest in my group, and they all got signed up to go into the Army. So I was thinking about joining with them. But then we had one friend that went and he signed up everybody else and he ended up not going. So, as a 17-year-old, that kind of freaks you out a little bit. Like, wait a minute, that's not what we were promised. So, but I got into, luckily I had a professor in community college that challenged me, so I was a bum, in high school. I was surfing, I was doing that, coming to class late. And he basically cornered me and said, son, you're wasting your talent and you're wasting my time. So either get your stuff together or today's drop ad, you can go drop, but if you're late for another minute of class, I'm going to fail you. So kind of, give me the kick I needed to, get my act together and do that. And then he helped me get on with the government. I started painting airplanes with the government and then got into security, computers and security. So.
Excellent. And how did you eventually get into healthcare?
So one of the things, when I was working for the state, I was a virtual CISO, and they did things a little differently than most virtual CISOs. It wasn't just work remotely from home. It was the main state agency Department of Administration would hire the CISOs, and they would contract them out to other state agencies who had need for a CISO because they had more cybersecurity experts there and could better vet people rather than each individual agency having to vet on their own. So that was doing that. And then this opportunity came up here at healthcare at AnMed. They were looking for the first one, someone who knew what to do with the program from the ground up. And that's what got me into healthcare. Now, I worked about 3.5 years for the DOD as the CIO for the 2nd Dental Battalion. So that was my first foray into healthcare. Mm-hmm. And then I've come back to it.
Dental Battalion. That sounds painful.
Yeah, just for the clients.
That's like my worst nightmare. Okay, a battalion of dentists. That would be, and if they were dressed in clown suits, that would even be worse. Right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, a lot of really interesting topics. Obviously, as of late, we had we have a couple of large incidents recently. Were you affected by change?
No, we were not materially affected by them. Luckily for us, only probably I'd say about 25% of our stuff went through them, and it went through what we call. So we weren't reached by a third party; as a fourth party because we had a contractor that used change. Mm-hmm. Like I said, just a minimal amount of stuff, and we had a great staff here that was able to say, "Okay, here's the problem. Let's start manually doing these processes and do that." So, we just had a little blip on our radar. Mm-hmm. Luckily.
How does that affect your thinking or strategy moving forward? Are you making any changes to your program?
Yeah, so one of the things I like to do is, particularly after any hack, like the MGM hack came out, well, they social engineered, the help desk and stuff like that. So we made changes to our help desk policy. You can't get a password reset and an MFA reset within 48 hours of each other unless you show up in person. We don't do it over the telephone. Change Healthcare is basically pointed out how if you have one key vendor that gets hit, you may not be the brunt of the cyber attack, but you can be taken down, just like the Hospital of London was. The pathology person got hit. So start to look at all your key processes and say, hey, where do we rely on one vendor? How hard would it be to spin up a second vendor? Do we have procurement rules in place that, you got to get 3 bids and you got to do this, you got to have a waiting period? Is all that going to affect us in an emergency? So look at things outside cyber, just look at risk in general.
That's really great. So it sounds like you've added this notion of an alternative vendor or solution as part of your business continuity and resiliency program. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, do you also do tabletop exercises?
Yes, we do. We do. And I like to have the ones like when we did a ransomware thing, we had an IT security meeting, brought everybody together, didn't tell them what it was, and then we called the person on call and said, hey, a computer on this floor just got hit with ransomware. What do you do? And so he had to call the manager on call. And then the manager on call stood up and said, hey, we just had a computer get hit with ransomware. And you heard the, expletives go around the room.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, no, with different words. Yes. So, but then it's like, okay, so this is a drill. What do we do now? And we purposely left some steps out of our plan to see what people could, if they feel on the missing stuff. Like, okay, well, we'll go to the data center. Okay, well, you have to have badge access to get the data store. The badge server got hit. What do you do now?
Right.
Oh, well, our keys work for this door. Have you tried your keys? So yeah, it helps to walk through that because what you think is going to happen in an emergency isn't what happens.
It never is it?
No.
No matter how long you prepare or how often you prepare, it's always, I think there's a saying, and it's attributed to Mike Tyson. I'm not sure if it is or not, but everyone has a plan until they walk in the ring and get punched in the face, right?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. I love that too, because and I heard the story behind it. A reporter said, well, Mike, you fought several fights now, so they got a plan. They've seen you on tape. They've got a plan for you. Yeah. What happens now? And that's when he said, I plan to question the face.
Yeah. Well, speaking of plans, AI comes out of nowhere, right? Commercializable AI, right? The ability to consume it a lot faster and deeper than ever in the past, even though it's been around for years. How are you looking at that within your organization, and how are you preparing for risk associated with AI?
One of the things we're doing, we're standing up an AI governance board, and we're asking that anybody that wants to do any kind of AI, they have to run through the governance board first. Because what I have found is that people often don't realize the danger of just, hey, I got this big spreadsheet. I need to crunch this data. AI can do it for me without realizing that, AIs can become sentient. I like to give the example of, one thing AI is really good at is code review. Hey, look at my missile launch program here and see if there's any flaws in it. Okay, yeah, fix this, and this. Well, if you submit that to an AI and someone comes along 10 minutes later and says, hey, have you got any missile launch code? Yeah, I want to hear it. And get the perfect version of it. So people have to realize that, what they put out there can be sucked in and you may not want it sucked in. So
that's right. That sentient nature is so critical to understand, because that is the core of the risk. Now, are you looking at it? And I love the governance model. We hear a lot about how organizations are starting there. Do you have that cross-functional? Is it with every organization?
It is. We have a privacy officer involved. We have legal involved. We have, IT and IT security involved, so that, we want to be aware of the projects, not just so we can say no. And I'm not the old school, a CISO that says no to everything. I'm here to enable the business, and I want to do it in a secure manner. But in order to do that, I have to know what you're looking at and what you're trying to accomplish, and we can figure out a solution for it.
Yeah, and the impact, if it goes bad, what's the impact to the business, right? Yeah, that's great. And so are you doing internally developed projects with AI, or is it much more of we're just sort of testing it, doing some
testing it, stuff like that? And the way we do it here is we buy a lot of commercial off-the-shelf products. So I imagine people are going, hey, the data analytics group was going to say, we really need something to crunch all this stuff for us. So we want to be able to submit all this stuff to ChatGPT or Bard or whatever and have them do it for us. I was like, well, time out. Let's make sure, where are we putting our data? What are they doing with it? And all those kind of things, because while it could be a really benefit, it could open us up to a whole new avenue that we hadn't planned on before.
Yeah, it's great. So last year, the HHS announced the cybersecurity performance goals, the CPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Have you taken a look at that? And how do you, how are you thinking about changing your organization process or resources to comply with those?
So one of the things that, I went through and I filled it out and I took a little assessment, and a lot of it was, just putting on paper what I already figured out. I'm 2.5 years into this gig here. So, we made huge, substantial, progress since I got here. And it's just kind of helps to kind of have a good external lever I can use when I'm submitting items for budget and say, listen, this aligns to the performance goals. They said you need to do network segmentation, for example. We can do that. But if I just say, I need money for network segmentation, and they're like, well, it's not really in the budget. But if I say, hey, HHS says it's a good idea, we do this. So that's one of the things I like about it. It helps give us that extra lever that we might need to apply, pressure.
Yeah. Now, did you see the announcement last week that Google and Microsoft now are participating? Are you? Do you work with either of those infrastructures? I assume.
Yep, we do. And one of the things I'm always suspicious of, like the Microsofts and Googles of the world, it's like, hey, we'll help you get our foot in your door, and then we're going to charge you for it later. Mm-hmm. My big knock on Microsoft is they have a penchant for moving buttons. Oh my gosh! And if your admin console looks this way, they're used to doing this. You can go in 3 months later, and you've already created a document based on that, and they're like, "Where's that button you mentioned in here?" It's like they moved it, or they thought they want to start charging for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a consideration. But I think it's a good first step.
Yes, it is.
To help out the smaller organizations that just don't have the financial means.
And one of the things I think that, the criminals are realizing that, hey, if the big hospitals of the world are super protected, I'm going to start going for the smaller ones. So basically, as the bigger guys get better protected, it pushes it out more to the rural. So I do like that, hey, they're coming from the other end and saying, let's help the rurals out and stuff like that.
It's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 priorities or strategic initiatives over the next year or 2 years?
So, when I first came in here, I worked on email security, build that stuff around that. I'm really looking at building out a SOC and building out threat hunting. I want to make this job exciting for my people to do that give them something because, I'm a geek, and I like threat hunting and I like stopping bad guys because to me, bad guys are just bullies that are picking on people. So I like to help stop that. And I hope to light that fire in them that, hey, here's how we protect it. One of the things I have in my office is I have a board and has 17 lists of opportunities. Hey, if you want to further your career, take one of these and you can run with it. And I'll teach you how to do it. Blue team, red team, and fishing, fishing simulator, stuff like that. I can teach you that stuff, but you got to want to have that drive and ambition to do it.
I love that. Could you share that I'd love to post that. That's really great. I'm just having a conversation about career development for cybersecurity professionals, and that's a good framework, a good way to think about it. What keeps you up at night?
Oh, the famous CISO joke, everyone that's home with 2 things, everyone that works for me and everyone that doesn't. Actually, I try to get a lot of sleep, because I'm also of the mindset that, hey, we protect ourselves the best we can and we're getting better. Having coached AAU basketball and, coached my daughters all up through their sports leagues and stuff like that, there are some games you come in, you think you're prepared, and you just get blown out of the water.
Yeah.
Well, you look at, okay, well, why do we get blown out of the water? They were better at this, and this. Well, what others can we fix? If you thought the umpires were bad or something like that, well, we really can't fix that. But we're not doing the techniques. The other thing I find, like especially in sports, is don't criticize the player, criticize the technique. Find out where the flaw in the technique is. Hey, that ball got between your legs because you didn't get your glove on the ground. Let's really work on getting your glove on the ground. Those kind of things. Number one, it helps your self-esteem. Like, oh, I'm not the problem. My technique is the problem. And technique is easier to fix.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I always say there's no such thing as bad teammates. It's just a bad fit, right? Yeah. So you try to work through that through the evolution of the technique and, identification and realization that needs to be worked there. So that's really, really good. And of course, I assume you're a lifelong Celtics fan too, so you'll be rooting for us.
Actually, I was a big fan of the Spurs. And the reason I liked it was because of Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
If you ever learned about Tim Duncan, to me, he should be in the top 10 category, of all-time players, just because he didn't play basketball until the 10th grade in high school. He was a swimmer. A hurricane came through, wiped out his swimming pool at his school, and so he got interested in basketball. Wow. He learned the fundamentals, and he really focused on the fundamentals, and that's why they call him the big fundamentals. Usually with fun in quotation marks because they say he's so boring, he's not really fun. But it relates to cybersecurity because if you take care of the fundamentals, you will have a solid program to build off of.
Yeah, that's a great point. you need to give folks sort of a view of what can be, what the art of possibility is, if you will. And I love that you're laying out that journey for people as well on your team. So outside of healthcare and cyber, what's your passion? What are you most passionate about? What would you be doing if you weren't doing this job?
So either surfing or working on cars. I have
all right.
1989 Toyota Supra that I'm fixing up. And that's a turbo.
89. Okay.
Yeah, 89. Yeah. That was kind of one of my high school dream cars, so I couldn't afford it then. I can afford it now. And like I said, I'm one of the things that interesting transcribed in my career was I was really good at computers in high school, went to college, got a bad teacher. So I got out of it and I got into auto mechanics and auto paint. And auto mechanics, my teacher I mentioned earlier, he also told me, he said, Scott, don't be a parts chunker. The car comes in, doesn't start. Just don't start, don't parts at it. Troubleshoot it. Find out why it doesn't start, Okay, it doesn't start. Okay, well, it's got a bad battery. So you put a battery in it. 3 days later, it's dead. Oh, well, it must be a bad starter. You put a bad starter in it. 3 days later, it's dead. Oh, a bad alternator. What's a bad alternator to start with? But if you don't test those things and go through a procedure of, let me check this and this and this, then you just end up wasting a lot of time and effort. So that taught me how to troubleshoot a lot of things in IT and gave me the confidence to pretty much address any problem I come across, because there's a solution out there. You just got to find it.
Yeah, it's very transferable, that line of work and industry. I love that notion of diagnosing things too before you act, right? Not ready, fire, aim, but ready, aim, aim, really understand the problem and then test and diagnose and then adjust accordingly. And that's what I used to tell a lot of the athletes that come to me. They said, hey, I want to be the next, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. I said, Kobe Bryant, do you have the desire to put in the work? Yes.
When Kobe Bryant first came out, I hated him. I thought he was just an arrogant kid, didn't know anything. But later on in life, I learned the drive that he had and the passion he put in it. The reporter asked him one time, how are you so good at shooting? He said, I make 200 shots every day at practice. And he said, well, how do you know when you hit 200? He said, I count. It's not, I think I made 200 a day. I'm about there. No, he knew he had made 200. He counted 200 so that it wasn't just, that's close enough. That's good enough. No, he wanted to have, I had done it. And once I learned that about him, like, wow, he really, I heard other stories where he would show up to a gym, and if he knew you were on the opposing team, he would not leave before you did. And there was actually a player that said, hey, I'm going to stay here as long as, Kobe will, but he ended up leaving. And the guy asked him later on that night, said, well, why did you stay so long? He says, because I knew you were still in the gym. He said, I was not going to leave before you did.
I love that.
But and it's same thing with cybersecurity. If you immerse yourself in stuff, then find something that you love, chase that passion, and become really, really good at it.
Yeah, it tends to be the formula for success. That notion of Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hours that you need to put in, right, to something. And you have to be maniacal about that practice, and it does make you a better writer, basketball professional, whatever that is, whatever you desire, you got to put the work in.
Yes.
You have to be vigilant, if you will, and diligent. That's a really great point, which is a good segue into a couple of next questions. So if you were to go back in time, Scott, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I would tell it that it gets better. A lot of times, especially young people, you're put in situations where you're forced to be there with other people your age, and you're all trying to figure out this big mess called life. And you can get depressed and sad about it, but it gets better. So do those things. Take some risks in life. One of the things I tell people is, when I was younger, I was kind of convinced I was ugly, so I wouldn't ask the pretty girls out. Well, then I figured out later on in life that I had this fear of rejection. So I set about a plan. You know what? I'm going to get rejected 10 times a month until I get over this fear. And the ironic thing is every girl I asked out went out with me.
Yeah.
So it kind of had to change some tapes that were playing in my head. So that's what I mean. It gets better. Take the risks, because if she's not going out with you right now, if you ask her, she says no, you're still in the same situation you were before, except for you have a little more knowledge now. Okay, she is not going to go out with me. But at least if she says yes, hey, you have a better situation than you did before, and we were stopped from taking the risk because you were still stuff like this. That's what I would tell myself. I do that and just keep hustling.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy that can be applied to just about anything. Have the courage to take that step And if you don't, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And one of the things I tell my employees is it's okay to fail. I would rather have you fail and me help you correct it. And if you do something and you're doing your best effort at it and it fails and something goes wrong, I want to have your back. I had a great leader one time. He said, I was served as his deputy. He said, Scott, if I go to a conference and I come back, I've gone a week and I come back and there's a decision on my desk that you could have made, I'm going to be upset. He said, if you made the wrong decision, we can turn that around. But I'm going to be upset if there was something you could have done and you didn't do it. And for me, that's kind of the mantra I kind of live by. I want you to take the risks. And if you make a mistake, we'll correct it. We'll do whatever it takes to correct it. Yeah. But I want you to learn and do that.
Yeah. And it's never the mistake. I found it's always the repeating the same mistake several times. Not twice, 3 times, but several times. And also the cover up, right? Don't ever cover up the mistake. No. Own it, be accountable for it, and then learn from it so you can get better. All right. This is the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. I have to ask you this question. Okay. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done? I think I know the answer.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how many podcast guests you have that have ever died before, but I actually had a truck fall on me one time. So taking the wheels off of it, truck fell on me. I was out. Luckily, my neighbor had a friend that came over and helped get off of me. So, and I've also almost died surfing one time. I surfed some hurricane swell and I got, knocked under and couldn't get up and then finally got up, but so I've done some risky things in my life.
Yeah, I figured it would be surfing related. Yeah. What are some really interesting places you've surfed?
So I grew up in North Carolina near the coast. And so I spent a lot of my time doing that. Sometimes we make trips out to Hatteras and Dale Creek, the Outer Banks, surf out here. A lot of times it was local. I've been down just January. I was surfing in Pensacola. My daughters had a basketball game down there. So brought the board, went down there and did that. So I try to get when I can.
You've been out west? Have you ever surfed?
Never surfed out west. I've only been in the Pacific Ocean one time, and it was as cold as they say it is. And but I've never had a chance to go out there and do any surfing out there.
Well, you got to make some time for Santa Cruz. That's the surfing capital.
Oh yeah.
Real good surfing out there. Yeah. All right. Do you have any encounters with sharks when you were out there surfing?
A couple times. The scariest time was with a dolphin. I was actually sitting on my board waiting for waves, and I had a dolphin jump out of the water 10 feet from me, and that kind of freaked you out. You're like, oh, what's that? I was like, oh, it's a dolphin. Sharks don't jump,
It's not a hunchback. It's not a hunchback doing a breach or any of the whales. Yeah,
and usually if you have a dolphin nearby, it's a good indicator that sharks aren't there.
Yeah, that's right.
And stuff like that. I had been out one time and if you understand the differences between dolphins and sharks, dolphins usually will come up with their fins and be in a circular motion. Yeah. The fin never pops up and just stays up like this and then it goes down. That's a shark. And I've had that one time, I said, time to go. And another funny story I like to tell is a friend of mine, he said, hey, I got this great surfing spot. He said, but we got to walk a ways because it's at the end of a very huge sandbar. So we go there, it's the end of an island, and there was a trench there, and there was water flowing through it that connected the ocean to the sound side. And he said, stop, wait. I said, what are we waiting for? Surfing's way out there. We got to get going. He said, no. He said, we got to wait. I said, why do we got to wait? He said, we got to wait for the shark. I'm like, for the shark? He said, yeah, every so often the shark swims through there. And sure enough, swimming there, and then we jumped over the thing. I'm like, wait a minute. We're going in his spot. No, let's go somewhere else, buddy.
Oh, man.
You don't wait for the shark if you know the shark's coming.
Yeah, that's right. Well, at least he knew.
Yeah, exactly.
Could have been worse. Yeah. What's hardest lesson in your career? So one of the hardest lessons I learned was that I was hired one time as an outsider. And me and 2 other people were hired. We were all ISOs. We were brought into this organization. And they had a certain mindset about hiring and stuff like that. And we got in there. And, when you bring in outsiders, you get that fresh perspective. One of the things I didn't realize is you can present very viable and sound principles, but make them look completely foolish. And so we would do that. We would stand up in meetings and say, hey, NIST says to do this, or CISO says to do this, and all this stuff. And why aren't we doing this? Why do we have this, without understanding the why behind it? And so we came across as complete jerks that making them look foolish, that they didn't know what they were doing. And so I had to learn that's not a good look, So having to be political. But again, that also taught me a lot about
how to be political, how to play the game, how to build trust between departments. I came to one organization one time and I was asked to, come in with a 30, 60, 90-day plan. I came in there and they hadn't passed in 3 years. And so I'm like, why haven't you passed? Like, oh, we made a mistake one time and a server shut down, so management doesn't trust IT. They were frozen. They had an organizational culture of fear. And it wasn't the one that was, when you walked to HR, you got all the posters up there.
Yeah.
This was the IT organization unspoken of fear. And so, okay, so 30, 60, 90-day plan went on the shelf. We've got to overcome this. We've got to build up trust. We got to do that. So anytime I had something that might paint the IT department or, a supervisor or anything in a bad light, I would go to them first and say, hey, I've got to tell the CIO this. How do you want to shape this? I don't want it to come across that you're not doing your job, but I want you to be prepared for when they ask you, well, why haven't we passed in this, stuff like that. So involving other people and keeping them from being blindsided, that helped me, that first early lesson of, making people look foolish actually helped me down the line.
Yeah. And developing that empathy to focus and prioritize the thing that needs to get fixed first was really important. That's a great story, Scott.
And people don't want to people don't want to look bad. And I'm not the kind of guy that wants to come across as a jerk because I've actually hired to replace several jerks, Yeah.
I have a no jerk rule. So I like that. All right. You're on a desert island and you could bring 5 albums or movies with you or one of each. What would you bring?
So the first movie would be my favorite book, In the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, nice.
One thing I like that, especially if you think about cybersecurity or something like that. So I don't know if you read The Count of Monte Cristo or seen the movies.
Years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really cool how the guy basically gets falsely imprisoned and stuff like that. And he used the tactics that his enemies used against him to perpetrate their downfall. And so to me, that was kind of cool. And of course, it's also about a movie about getting off an island. So that would definitely help on an island.
Yeah. It's surviving in this face of adversity.
Yeah.
And not, retaining your dignity in the process.
And soaking up as much learning as you could by meeting with the abbé that was in the prison with him and learning all these secrets that he had gave him the freedom to escape later on in life. And that ties into the second movie I would carry was The Shawshank Redemption. Again, another movie about escape, great movie in there. And the famous line, get busy living or get busy dying.
Yeah, that's right. And
so basically take action of your life, take action of your career, take action of your stuff, get busy with that. Don't just wait for it to come to you. Exactly. One of the executives I worked with, he was saying on his desk, he said, so many people wait in line for the elevator to success when the stairs are right around the corner.
Right. They're always stairs. They're always stairs.
And people don't want to go, I'll wait for the elevator to come, I heard somebody else say, why wait for your ship to come in? Why don't you swim out and meet it? Like that.
Unless, of course, there's a shark sighting.
Exactly. He knows there's a shark. Don't do the loop.
Take your time there.
I think some of the music I would take with me would probably be the soundtrack to American Graffiti.
Nice.
I grew up, without a TV for a while. And so, but I had my parents' albums that, and that was one, and the Beach Boys and stuff like that. So,
well, surfing, of course, you'd have
to. Surfing Safari. Yep. The Beach Boys album. Probably be another one on there. So, nice. But that would be some of my favorites there.
Excellent. Last question. What advice would you give to someone coming out of school that wanted to pursue a cyber or an IT profession in healthcare?
Yeah. So I would tell them, get a job in IT, even if it's not necessarily where you're at. When I was first, so a little backstory. So when I got into, I was painting airplanes for the government. That's how I started with the DOD. I came home one day and my wife said, what would you love to do for work if you could do it? And I said, well, I'd love to get back in computers. And she said, well, why don't you? I said, it'd be a 50% pay cut. We got 2 babies in diapers. How are we going to survive? She said, go ahead, we'll manage.
That's awesome.
And it was so awesome. I got back in. I don't feel like I've worked a day since. My first job was a computer operator. Come in, you press a series of codes, print out, you tear them out, you do backup, stuff like that. But on our backup server was also the antivirus console. So I asked my boss, said, hey, who's monitoring the antivirus console? She's like, nobody. I said, well, can I do it? Sure. So I started doing that. Start looking for jobs that are going undone and volunteering and doing it.
I love that.
One of the things that catches up so many young people and even, older people in the career, they'll say, well, when they start paying me more, I'll start doing more.
Yeah.
Without realizing they're missing out on this huge opportunity for me, I like to use this phrase, I'm hustling for tomorrow's dollars, not today's dollars.
Exactly.
You know, I'm getting stuff, okay, you're not paying me now, but I'm getting to put it on my resume. I served as a team lead for no extra pay. I got to put that on my resume. You know, I served as a relief supervisor, no extra pay. Got to put that on my resume. Got experience to the world of supervisors. At the plant, you know, you only got an email address if you were a supervisor. Well, so I did that, you know, so I could start making contacts and doing that stuff. Again, no extra pay at the moment, but it benefited me so much more down the line. You know, one of the other things I tell people, if you want to get into cybersecurity or any IT position, work a help desk. It teaches you the language of IT, you know, and how someone can say, my computer doesn't work. And it means 10 different things to 10 different people. My computer won't turn on. Same thing, 10 different things to 10 different people. Learn how to troubleshoot that. What do you mean it doesn't turn on? Do you see anything on your monitor? Do you have a blue light down here? That kind of stuff. Learning to work through those processes and also learning the empathy. Because a lot of times when people call the help desk, they're upset. They're frustrated. They got a spreadsheet they've got to get their boss by in 30 minutes and their Excel isn't opening. So they're going to be hot. Learn how to deal with hot-headed people. Learn how to do that and calm that down. And that will get you into there. And then look to see, you know, the first job that comes open in healthcare might not be a cybersecurity analyst. It might be at the help desk. It might be working an IT thing. But get in and do it. If you can't get in, create your own home lab. Look for opportunities. Take that initiative to go in. I got a job one time because I'd never done this in an enterprise. You know, they say it was all about Active Directory, set them this and that. And I said, well, here's my home lab. And it's got 15 computers and the router and the switch and all this stuff. So it's like, you set that up, we can teach you at rest. If you can do that and you're ambitious enough to set it up, come on board.
That's great. That's great advice. And I see a future in education for you. So it's like at the adjunct level or being a professor. What a great advice. I mean, yeah, terrific. Terrific way to end the program. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. And if you're on the front lines protecting patient safety and delivering patient care, remember to stay vigilant because risk never sleeps.